we get the multiple, we can take the power set of A, metastructure, and what we can do is we can do something pretty handy and nifty here, which is we can take the power set of A. And what we get here then is we get a multiple that actually is definable, right? Of course, the void, especially, and again, this is in set theory, right? The void is always included. But you'll notice that now suddenly, what we actually have is we have a bunch of other sets that are not just the set of the void or the void itself. So what we have now is we now have a presentation that includes non-void sets, right? These would be non-void sets.
So is that why it's a 0, 7? Are you sure?
Oh, sorry. Because by taking the power set, what we actually have is the set of a set. It just so happens to be the case that the set of this set is the void, but it's also the set of the set. Does that make sense? So it's not, it's what we don't have is just the pure presentation of the unpresentable, right, of the void. And so, and then of course, right, at this point we could have even substituted D, or delta, and taken sets of those. So, there we go. Badiou names the structure of the situation as its count as 1 as the state of the situation, which is why I said state, that's on 95. And then the threat of the void to the multiple does not come from the elements or the parts as such. The threat comes from the ontological excess to be found between belonging and inclusion, and this is between 96 and 97. And going back to what we were saying, right? The question comes: does an element belong? Does an element belong to the power set, right? To the state. Nothing about its inclusion in the power set,
It's problematic.
yeah, entails that it belongs. If it belongs to the power set, then it's included in the power set. But if it's just included, that doesn't entail that it belongs, right? So you run into this sort of question of what is the status of the set in inclusion and belonging. So where does Badiou, and this of course is again the threat of the void. So the metastructure draws its existence from the parts and renders them consistent by making the parts of the situation elements of the state of the situation. So this is obviously meta-ontological analysis, i.e. a philosophical analysis. But of course, just put in another way, what is the thing that draws in the parts and renders them consistent, i.e. making them into a situation? The count is 1, which is another name for what? The power set, right? The parts are the subsets. What does the power set do? It includes all the parts together, right? So once again, we just have a restatement of what he said a million times, which is this power set gathers together just the parts. So because every state of the situation is also a situation, right, as we've mentioned, it's also a situation, and it can determine a quote-unquote distance from the original situation. This allows for different classifications in regard to the situation, the state of the situation, and the metastructure. So, right, here we have our situation. Then what? We have a quote-unquote distance, right, and this is, again, metaphorical. This is for ease of understanding. A distance of 1, right, which would grant us the state. And then a distance of 2, which would grant us the metastructure. But what you'll notice is the distance of 1, what does this make the metastructure relative to the state?
A power set. Or a subset.
Yeah, and so it's, a power set, which makes the state rather the metastructure, the state of the state. Does that make sense?
But also, I mean, could you also read it as a power set of the power set of the set?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we have the situation, which is, again, we take a power set, this gives us the state. We take another power set, which gives us the metastructure. But here's the thing, this is also a set. So what can we do? We can make this situation. And then what does this make?
Makes it a state.
Makes this a state. And then what do we get? We get the power set, the power set, power set of A. Right? And then what would this be?
The metastructure of the state of the situation.
There we go. So are we okay on this and the distance between them? Okay, so then what we have is we have that because of every state of the situation is, we already covered this. So then he introduces the terms. And a normal term is both presented and represented, right? Which is to say it both belongs and is included. An excrescence is a term that is represented but not presented. So what this means is it's a term that would appear in the state, right, but would have been lost from the situation, right? It's something that only occurs in the state. I'm trying to think of good examples. I mean, obviously he gets several examples in the next one. Classes, voters, right? They only appear as a representation, not as a presentation. That's excrescence. And then of course there is the singular, which is a term that is presented, right? It belongs, but is not included, right? It's not represented. So what would happen to if you guys want to do a little pop quiz, what would happen to a singular term of the situation in the state? A singular term that belongs to the situation.
It would have to be bracketed and put as a subpart of.
Right, but let's not take a method. Let's just say if I take a power set of the situation, what happens to a singular element?
Becomes a singleton.
It doesn't. This is actually one of the big points. The situation may become a singleton, but the element, the singular element within it, disappears.
Oh, because they can't be represented twice.
Well, it can't be represented once, right? Because the power set takes together all the parts, right? The things that are included. Mm-hmm. And does everyone remember what inclusion entails? Okay, so what it
not until belong. I'm sorry, I don't know what you're asking.
Okay, so what it entails for something to be included is that all of its elements also be elements of the original set. So,
So I mean, the point to make is that, like, so when you get down to the where you have situation, state, the void is included in that first situation, but it does not belong to that first situation. Would that be
Yeah.
correct?
yeah, because it's included. Let me give another example. The set of all prime numbers, right, is included and belongs to the set of all odd numbers. Right, does that make sense? Because prime can't be divided by 2. It means it can't be even. Which means that every single number that is prime also has to be odd.
2 is a prime number.
2 is also prime.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry.
You're far versatile.
I'm pretty tight. Okay, let's change it. Every prime number after 100 is included in every odd. Okay, how's that? Is it better? Feel good by yourself?
No response.
Okay. Here's the important conceptual point, right? Is there's a list of odd numbers. That's there's a set of odd numbers, right? Which has all of these elements. One of the elements of all the odd numbers is going to be all the prime numbers, right, as a set, right? Because or all the prime numbers after 100. There we go, all the prime numbers after 100. Okay, so that is also itself a set, which has elements from whatever the first prime number is after 100. I don't know, I didn't memorize my prime numbers. But does this make sense? So there's a set, which is all the prime numbers after 100, which includes definable elements, right? Does that make sense? All of those belong to two things. They belong to the set of prime numbers over 100, but they also belong to the set of all odd numbers. So